Dr. Kelly, when you think of Recovery Month, what does it mean to you, and why is it so important for the recovery community and the people working on the front lines every day?
It's not only a national, recovery event, but it's National Recovery Month. There's a whole month of emphasis, not just a day, but a whole month to get it dedicated to it. That just, signifies and reflects its significance and importance. I think, second, I think it highlights recovery and the very positive aspects in an often, grim picture that we hear in the media every day of nothing but, the latest overdose death rate. That's been the story of the last 10 to 20 years. When it's important to reflect and champion and celebrate the individuals and families who have been affected, but the millions of people living in recovery and working in recovery support service settings, such as peers in recovery, coaches. So that's, I think, very important to remember. And I think also, again, since 1989, the President of the United States has published a letter acknowledging and supporting Recovery Month every single year, including President Trump right now, highlighting its significance. Again, it's highly probable that most people will eventually achieve remission and recovery, but it can take a while to get into recovery. But the good news is there are things that we can do, including providing peer support and recovery coaching, that can accelerate that timeline into initial remission and recovery and help people to stay there.
During National Recovery Month, we celebrate all the different paths to recovery. Why are peers such an important part of that journey, and how do they help people build up their recovery capital?
Peers, I think, increasingly, we've recognized the significance and importance of peers. I mean, this stems back 100 years, really, nearly, to the recognition of how peers can help other individuals, kindred spirits who've suffered from the same illness. There's many ways that they do that. And one is obvious in the sense that they provide visible, tangible beacons of hope of what can be achieved in recovery. They can also help, future recoveries shed the cloak of stigma because they themselves have been there and come through the other side, which can facilitate greater engagement and foster hope and optimism. I think also they can, very importantly, impart through their own lived experience, impart the recovery coping skills and knowledge that can help guide prospective people who are entering recovery, show them the way, in other words, the different ways that work for people in recovery. And that can help build resilience against future relapse and recurrence. And they can provide, the resources, the recovery capital.
Recovery coaching is still pretty new compared to other parts of the recovery system. What kinds of research do we still need in order to really show the impact that coaches are making?
Well, we have some, and one of my colleagues, Dr. David Eddy, has nicely summarized the existing literature on recovery coaching in the addiction field in a couple of systematic reviews, which show benefit, real tangible benefit for the utility of recovery coaching, the benefits attributable to recovery coaching models, which is great. But we need a lot more research in these areas of recovery coaching and other recovery support services. But we have not done a good job in evaluating the kinds of support services and infrastructure, including recovery coaching and peer models, that really are responsible for carrying the rest of that effect forwards. When you think about the risk of reinstatement, the risk of relapse and reinstatement of these disorders lasts, the elevated risk lasts for about 5 years after initial remission. So that's a long time of instability and susceptibility to recurrence of these disorders. So we need a lot more studies on the kinds of community-based infrastructure and support that can help people through that journey of that initial 5-year period. Recovery coaching and peer support models housed in other in treatment and in community-based recovery support services, I think will and have shown, but will show in the future, effectiveness and cost effectiveness, because these things can help people prevent relapse and recurrence, overdose deaths, emergency department use, in other words, expensive medical services.
Although recovery coaches know firsthand that recovery is possible, sometimes the wider community doesn't understand this. How can research and science help coaches show the value of what they do on the ground?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think one of the things that we need to do as a scientific research community is do a much better job of translating and disseminating the research findings into usable information that can both sensitize and empower clinical providers so they understand more forcefully exactly what the utility of their colleagues on the front lines in the communities can provide vis-a-vis recovery coaching models, as well as recovery coaches themselves to be able to communicate their own value to those individuals and systems that they serve. I think we could do a much better job and of again of empowering recovery coaches, giving them results from the studies which they participate in. And this is very important, that we historically have tended in some instances to exploit the recovery community or recovery workforce without giving back from the scientific community. So I think that's something that we've been remiss in doing, and making sure that we give back by translating our findings to those individuals and communities that can best benefit directly from it. We try to do that, of course, through our own recovery bulletin, which is designed to do exactly that, as well as other resources that I'm blowing my own trumpet here, of course, but it's something that I feel passionately about, that we should do a better job of translating, contextualizing, disseminating evidence to the benefit of the public good, including the recovery workforce and clinicians as well.
Could give one message to the recovery community during National Recovery Month about their role in building recovery capital and shaping the landscape as a whole, what would that be?
The first thing I would say is that you are doing the work of angels. It can seem at times that you're not making a difference because you don't always see the immediate results of the services you provide. But your own lived experience, as hard as that has been to go through, is so valuable in terms of transmitting hope and optimism in those that so desperately need it, as recovery coaches know themselves as they look back on their own addiction histories. And you're literally saving lives, building hope and optimism. You're helping to deconstruct stigma and discrimination by the services you provide, by your lived experience, by your role modeling of what it's like to be in recovery. And you are providing an overall enormous added value to our overall national efforts to address addiction by your service and what you do.
Dr. Kelly, thank you. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to see you, and truly a big thank you for coming and chatting today.